I finally got to decorate for fall, so I feel like I'm in full fall DIY mode. I can't wait to share with you what I created today, so stick around and find out. We're going to start with this plastic trick-or-treat pumpkin. This was left over in my shed. We had several of them. Every time my kids can't find their trick-or-treat bag, we end up buying another pumpkin, so we had kind of a lot of these in the shed. But we're going to take that and remove the handle, and then I'm going to take some foam board, and I'm just going to trace the top of the pumpkin on the foam board and cut it out and glue the foam board to the top of the pumpkin. And then I had these wood pieces that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to glue 2 of them together on top of the foam board to make the stem of my pumpkin. Then I'm going to take the microfiber mop that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be removing it from the plastic piece that connects it together to make the mop head. I just use my wire cutters to cut off the pieces that are holding it together, and then I slide it out of this black plastic piece. It took a little bit of effort to get it out of there. I think I was pulling it the wrong way, because once I figured that out, it came out quickly. So if you have another way to take the mop head off, let me know in the comments below. This is the easiest way I figured out to do it. So the mop is just tied together with part of the mop to kind of loop it together. So I just untie that, and then I have like this continuous strand of mop. And then I'm just going to glue it around in a circle around the entire pumpkin. So my foam board ends up having kind of a lip on one side. I guess I didn't notice that as I was gluing it on, but I was able to cover it up with the mop. I would just make sure when you're tracing your foam board you get it as close to the size of the top of the pumpkin as possible. When the project's over, you can't even really tell that there's an extra lip there, but I think, you know, if I was to do it again, I'd make sure I cut the circle better when I glued it on. Autumn comes too soon. So this is definitely one of those projects that you're going to want to watch TV while you do, or listen to a book, an audiobook or something while you're doing it, because it does take some time to get the mop all the way around to cover the entire pumpkin. It's not hard, it's just time consuming. I was able to almost cover this entire pumpkin with one mop. I had a little bit of the bottom that was not covered when I finished with the mop, and I just decided to go ahead and use a little bit of another mop. So it's up to you. I think I wanted to make sure it was totally covered and you couldn't see the bottom, so you might need about 2 mops for this. And then you're going to, once you have the mop all covered in your pumpkin, you're going to take some twine, and I just wound it around about 3 or 4 times, and then I tied it in a knot around the wood pieces to kind of give it the appearance of the stem part of the pumpkin. And then I just cut the loops apart once I had it tied on there. So this pumpkin cost me about $3 because I had the plastic pumpkin and then the mop and the wood stems. So $3 for a very cute farmhouse pumpkin. So the challenge was to use the colors gray, green, and white, so I'm starting out with white, and I'm just going to paint this 4x4 with 1 coat of Waverly White chalk paint. I picked up these ceramic pumpkins at Hobby Lobby. They were $4.99 each. I picked up 3 of them. They were 40% off, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove the tags, and then I'm going to go ahead and start painting them with my chalk paint. So I start out painting the stem, and I'm using Hazelnut Chalk Paint by Waverly, and then I'm going to dry brush on top of that Cashew by Waverly. And then the first pumpkin I'm going to start out with the Elephant Gray chalk paint from Waverly, and I'm just going to give these ceramic pumpkins 1 coat, and then I'm going to go back over and dry brush with steel chalk paint from Waverly. I was a little worried when I started dry brushing that it was a lot lighter and it kind of looks like white, but as it dries it gives it a really nice color on top of that. I go ahead and move on to my other two pumpkins, and I'm just painting those stems with the same hazelnut and cashew colors, and then I'm going to pick up the second pumpkin and I'm going to start painting it my green color. I will list in the description box below all the paint colors that I used for this project. So I go ahead and start distressing this pumpkin, and I'm going over it with a sage color, and at first I was really worried again that it was too light, but after it dries it turns out to be a really pretty color. And then for my third pumpkin I'm decided to do blue. Blue is a really popular color this year for fall, and I've done a few other projects and I just really love how the blue kind of goes with the fall colors. So I go ahead and give that a dark undercoat and then a lighter coat of blue on top. Now that the pumpkins are set off to the side drying, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my wood block, and I'm using some sandpaper and I'm just going to go over the entire wood block and distress it and pull off some of that paint. I'm not sure if I'm using the wrong kind of sandpaper today because the paint just didn't seem like it wanted to come off very well, but I go ahead and I spend some time and I go over the entire block to make sure that I have sanded off what I want to come off. Once I have that all sanded, I'm going to take my antique Waverly wax and I'm going to paint it on to each section of this wood block. After I get it painted on, I just take a rag and I wipe it down and get all the excess off so it gives it a nice aged look, and you get that kind of antique farmhouse look. I am now ready to attach my harvest sign that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm using some hot glue and I'm just putting it in random areas on my sign to get it to stick to the wood. I do have some difficulty getting it to stick on there with the hot glue, and my friend Nadia over at DIY with Nadia was using one of these signs in one of her latest videos and was using super glue, and I thought that probably would be a better idea to glue this on there with than the hot glue, because part of it didn't want to stick on there and I had to go back and they're just so thin. So just an idea, if you're going to use these signs and you're gluing them onto something, I'm thinking that the super glue is the best bet. And here they are. They turned out so pretty. I really love how the colors go together, and those modern colors, those green, gray, and white that we were using for the challenge just look so pretty together in my harvest pumpkin sign. I hope you like it, and I just think they are so elegant and beautiful. So I'm going to take this Dollar Tree ribbon that I got and I'm going to measure just from the middle of the top of the pumpkin to the middle of the bottom of the pumpkin, and then I'm going to cut strips out of this roll of ribbon. It does end up taking the whole roll of ribbon and then another strip. So if you're going to recreate this project, you're going to want to buy 2 rolls of ribbon. So we're ready to glue the ribbon on, and I'm just using my hot glue gun and I'm gluing like some glue at the top and then gluing some glue at the bottom, and it was kind of hard to stick to the paint. I don't know why, but I had to really kind of hold down the ribbon to get it to adhere to the pumpkin. But I go around and I just kind of do a pattern to get the ribbon on, and then I'm ready to take these wood pieces that I picked up at the Dollar Tree and we're going to use that as the stem of the pumpkin. So next I'm going to take these burlap leaves that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to stick it in kind of underneath the wood piece to give it the leaves of our pumpkin.
Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we see, you know?
So once I get those leaves in, I do go ahead and end up adding some raffia to the top of that one. And then we're ready to move on to the second one. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the second foam pumpkin with that white Waverly chalk paint as well. To get it all painted, I'm going to take this spackle that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to go over the entire pumpkin with the spackle. And I'm just trying to give it some texture and a different kind of feel to the pumpkin, so it's just kind of however much you want to put on there. I just make sure I cover the entire thing, both the top and part of the bottom and all of the sides of it. And then I'm going to go ahead and set that aside for a little while to dry, and then once it's dry I'm going to add the Waverly Antique Wax to it, and I'm just kind of dabbing it on. It's still a little bit wet, so I had to kind of be careful with getting the antique wax on, and then it does take quite a bit of time for this to dry. I think I let it sit overnight. And then I'm going to take some Waverly white chalk paint and I'm going to go over that again, and then I get this kind of fun woodsy texture. And so then I'm going to take the another one of those wood stems, and I'm going to glue it onto the top for the stem of our pumpkin. And I actually end up adding two here, just to give it a little bit of height, and you'll see in a minute like it comes off because the texture part is still a little bit wet. So if you're going to recreate this, just make sure you give it enough time to dry. I did end up setting it outside in the sun for a little while. And then I have these acorns that I also picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just kind of playing around with the pumpkin and trying to decide where to put it. I do end up using some more of those burlap leaves and kind of settling the acorns into the burlap leaves. I really love how this pumpkin ends up turning out. It's got this really nice woodsy feel to it, and it's just very rustic, and I love how the texture gives it this kind of fun wood feel, and the acorns just look really cute in the leaf part. So I do end up adding some raffia to this one too, as well at the top, just to give it an extra special something. So for the third pumpkin that we're doing today, I picked up some buttons at the Dollar Tree, and you end up needing about 3 containers of buttons to do this pumpkin. And I go ahead and remove the top again, and then we're just going to take the buttons and glue them all over randomly onto the pumpkin. I realized later that I probably should have painted this pumpkin as well with the white Waverly paint. I didn't think it would be a big deal because I'm going to spray paint it later, but I realized that there ends up being some little nooks and crannies that you can kind of see the orange through, and I had to use a lot of extra spray paint. So if you're going to recreate this pumpkin, probably painting it ahead of time would be a better idea. But you're just going to randomly glue the buttons all over, and I did go ahead and glue some of them overlapping others, so it gave it some texture and some different look as it goes around the pumpkin. So here we are after one container of the buttons, and I just started gluing some of those smaller ones on top of the other ones, and now we're going to start container number 2. So here it is after container number 2, and we're just about finished covering it. So it doesn't actually take a full third container unless you wanted to glue more on top of other buttons throughout the pumpkin. You could totally use the entire container. I was honestly getting tired, so I just decided to stop where I ended up stopping. But you could use the entire container and just go back around and fill in the holes in the pumpkin if you wanted to. Even if the sky is falling down, even if the sky is falling down, the sky is falling down. So once I get all the buttons glued onto it, I go outside with some white spray paint, and I'm going to cover the entire pumpkin with some white spray paint. And then I decide to go over it with some pink spray paint but then I don't really like how that looks, so I go back over it with some more white paint. And it takes me about 3 or 4 coats of the spray paint to really cover all the buttons and to make sure that I've covered all of the orange part of the pumpkin. So once we have the spray paint all on our pumpkin and it's totally covered, we're ready to add the stem, and I'm just using some of those wood stems again from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to add 2 here for some height. I'm ready to add a bow, and at first I was going to try to use this burlap ribbon, but I decided I didn't like it. So I have this kind of off-white colored ribbon that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I just cut some strips of it, tie it onto the stem, and then I tie a little shoelace bow to go in the front to give it that shabby chic look. And then I take some of the pearls from the Dollar Tree and I just glue them randomly all around the pumpkin to go along with that shabby chic look. So here they are, the shabby chic rustic pumpkins, and I think they turned out so adorable. My favorite one is the woodsy one that has the acorns. I just think that is so unique looking and special, and I do love shabby chic, so the buttons are kind of a nice twist to a normal pumpkin decor. Let me know in the comments below which one was your favorite pumpkin today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, consider hitting that subscribe button, and remember, wherever you are in your journey is a perfect place to start. So today's projects are all inspiration pieces from this video right here from Canterbury Cottage, and Sherry is amazing. She makes wonderful DIYs, and this video really inspired me to make all 3 of the DIYs in this video today. This is also part of the Try It Tuesday, which I will get into more later in the video. So Sherry created this really cute pumpkin DIY using books, and I absolutely love book decor, and so I thought I had to recreate this. Now, I know that some of you are feeling like, oh my goodness, she's ruining these books, but definitely know I am a book lover myself, and I treasure all the things that I make with them. So many books make it to landfills every year, and so I don't mind creating book decor knowing that I'm going to continue to use it over and over again and save something from going to the landfill. So all we're doing here is removing the covers from all the books. They were just various sizes, and I did pick these up at the Dollar Tree. However, you know, if you're a thrift shopper, definitely they are so much cheaper at the thrift store, like $1/4 each. But all I did was glue them together, and then I took some of my orange Waverly chalk paint and my chippy brush, and I'm going to cover the entire stack of books with the orange paint. I used the chippy brush on purpose because I didn't want to give it full coverage. One of the books I was using had like some colored pages in it, and so I had to give that bottom book a really good coat down there, but the rest of them I just wanted it to look worn and aged. All I'm going to do next is take these wood rounds, and these were just left over in my stash. They do have something similar at the Dollar Tree. You're just going to glue them into the middle until you get the desired height of your stem. I used about 4 here. I felt like the book stack was pretty tall, so it needed a fairly good size stem. Once I get these all glued on, I'm using this twine wired ribbon from the Dollar Tree. Now mine does end up being like a little bit plain here on the top. I think it definitely needs some leaves or something, some greenery up at the top, but all I'm going to do is add this twine, and then this project is complete.
I've been feeling so small. Watch the clock ticking off the wall. But tonight I'm letting it go.
For this project, I'm going to use 3 of these pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to go ahead and remove the raffia bow, and then I'm going to sand off the glitter. I hardly ever use these pumpkins just because of how much glitter is on them. It takes forever to get it off. But once I sand off all of the glitter, I went ahead and traced some book pages and cut them out, and now I'm just going to glue them onto the front of my pumpkin. So I'm using a regular glue stick. You can definitely use Mod Podge for this if you would like, and I'm just going to adhere these all to the front of these pumpkins. So Sherry only used one of the pumpkins in her video. I decided to make this a little bit different than what she had created, and so I'm using 3 of the pumpkins today. So once I get the paper glued on to the front, I'm going to take my sanding block and go around all of the edges just to make it a clean edge and there's no excess book pages hanging off of these. So what I really loved about Sherry's video was just how rustic her DIYs were. They're simple, they're fun, and she does a lot of that on her channel, and I think you'll love it. So definitely check out her channel when you're done watching my video today. So once I get these all sanded, I decided I didn't want to leave them just the cream colors. I did pick cream pumpkins for this project on purpose because the book pages are cream. So I decided to go ahead and use my orange paint again, and this is, I believe, Pumpkin by Waverly. I'm using one of those, it's kind of like a stencil brush or a dry brush from the Dollar Tree over in the Crafter Square area. I go around the corners and all the edges with it, and then on this first pumpkin I go back and forth for the motion, and it picks up a tiny bit of the glitter part that's underneath there, and I don't want any of that wording to show up. So for the next 2, I decided to go ahead and dab. You can see here that I'm just kind of dabbing up and down as I go along the pumpkin. That worked a lot better, and none of the lettering or glitter part from the bottom comes through that way. So definitely you're gonna dab, not wipe. So once I get all 3 of those done, and then I'm just taking some hot glue and I'm going to glue the first 2 pumpkins together just on the sides. Then I'm going to take my 3rd pumpkin and I'm going to glue that to the front of these 2 pumpkins. So they're overlapping in a trio of pumpkins basically. So what I decided to do here was just take some stickers that I had in my stash, and I'm just going to adhere them onto these pumpkins. So there are so many options with stickers, and Dollar Tree has some really great stickers these days over in their Crafter Square area, and sometimes they even have like the seasonal stickers in the seasonal area, so you could really use any stickers. These came from my stash. Again, Hobby Lobby is a great option for stickers as well, because almost every other week they're half off, so you could find some really great stickers for these. My stickers are more on the Thanksgiving side, but I really loved how this turned out, and I feel like you could leave it up the entire fall season. So I'm just going to arrange these stickers onto my pumpkin here, and I am going to kind of show you how that all kind of came about. Now these stickers are more like vellum stickers, so they're not like paper stickers. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but they're pretty much like a clear background with the sticker part showing through, so then when you lay it down it doesn't really look like an actual sticker. So when you go shopping for your stickers, I think those are the kind that you're going to want to buy. That kind of vellum-y type sticker. Now, again, any sticker would work here. This way, though, the paper actually shows through that we put on the pumpkin. Anyway, so I just do various stickers. The reason I picked this sticker pack was for this long sunflower sticker, because I thought originally I was just going to put that sticker on, but I decided, I wanted to go for it, so I cover this whole thing with the stickers, and I'm not sorry I did, because it turns out really, really cute. It would be fun to make these with all kinds of different type of stickers on there. So this one becomes more, I think, classy looking with this particular sticker pack that I picked. But anyway, I'll let you watch just a tiny bit of me putting the stickers on here. Once I get all the stickers on, then it's going to be time to just adhere those raffia bows back onto the pumpkin. So I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't get any new ribbon out or anything. I thought the raffia bow looked great. It still goes kind of with the rustic theme we have going here with these pumpkins, and so I didn't feel like an extra ribbon was needed, but if you wanted to change up the ribbon or just put a different ribbon there, you totally could. But once I get them all glued on, then this project is complete.
Spend my coin for sure. I'm gonna be myself, rock a
of this project was inspired by Sherry's wagon project in her video. I didn't have a wagon, so I decided to just use one of these crates from the Dollar Tree, and I'm using my antique Waverly wax. Now my paintbrush was kind of wet, so my wax was kind of spitting everywhere, but you can also use watered down paint. I've done that many times, a trick my sister-in-law taught me several years ago. It works perfectly fine, so if you just have brown paint, add a little bit of water, shake it up, and you got a wonderful stain. Then I took my terracotta pots. These were also from the Dollar Tree like a long time ago in the summertime, but Hobby Lobby sells these all the time. So I'm going to paint 2 of them using my same orange color. Then once my crate dries, I'm just using these stickers I had in my stash. I believe they came from Hobby Lobby, just some stickers or some letter stickers. Rub-ons would work fine here too from Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to spell out pumpkin patch. So I start in the middle and then I go back towards the front of the word and then spell the rest of the word just to kind of make sure that it's even. And like I said, I'm spelling out pumpkin patch. I love these letter stickers. I've used them several times. At first when I bought them I thought, there's not very many of them, but I have used these for at least 3 different projects, so they were definitely a good buy. I picked them up at Hobby Lobby. So once I get pumpkin patch spelled out on our crate, then I'm going to go ahead and put some Spanish moss into my crate. So I just go ahead, put some hot glue down in the bottom, and then I just spread it out in the crate. Spanish moss is so crazy dirty. Anyway, it got everywhere, but you can pick up Spanish moss at the Dollar Tree as well, or you can pick it up on Amazon. Sometimes it's cheaper than even getting it at Hobby Lobby. I'll leave a link down in my description box if you want to check it out. So I went outside and I picked out some stems from my tree, and all I'm going to do is glue my stems into the little holes on my pot. That's what Sherry had done. She'd made a very rustic looking with just some natural twigs as her stems. I definitely think I needed some leaves. I might go back and add those later, but then this project is complete.
I just wanna feel alive. It's just what I do when I'm out, so try not to hold me down. Feel alive when I'm in this.
So I picked this unfinished wood pumpkin up at Hobby Lobby. Its original price was $5.99. I did get it for 40% off, so it comes out to be about $3.60. I am going to use both sides of this pumpkin, so I figure that's about $1.80 per side. I really like this pumpkin because it has a stand on the bottom, and so you're able to put it just about anywhere. So to start off, we're going to use the hazelnut chalk paint from Waverly, and we're going to paint the entire front side, and then we're going to go ahead and get in the slats there because we're going to go over this with another color, and I want the darker color to be in those lines.
And a sparkly shimmer on our skin.
So next we're going to take cashew chalk paint from Waverly, and we're just going to dry brush over the top of the hazelnut color, and I'm just going around in different directions and just trying to cover the whole pumpkin part so I get it to look farmhousey. So once I'm done with the dry brushing, I'm going to take one of these metal signs from the Dollar Tree, and they come in a 3-pack. I'm going to use the one that says thankful for this front side. I used to try to use hot glue to glue these on, but my friend Nadia at DIY with Nadia was using super glue one day, and I tried it out, and that was probably the best tip I could have got, because the super glue is easy to put on this metal sign and it sticks onto your project really well, where the glue, the hot glue, kind of makes a mess. So I'm using the super glue, and I'm just going to go in various parts of the sign, and then I'm going to flip it over and glue it on to the front of my pumpkin. So next we're ready to add a bow, and I'm just going to take one of these pre-made bows that they have at the Dollar Tree. The bottom of my bow is a little bit too long and it's hanging into my word, so I'm just going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut it in that triangle pattern and just make it shorter so you can still see my words. I really wanted to do today's project just to show that anybody can craft. Like, you can go and you can do simple things that are beautiful and give such an elegant look, and they don't have to cost a lot and they don't have to take a lot of time. So everyone can be a crafter. Here's our first look. I think it's adorable. I really love it, and it's very farmhouse. So next we're going to turn this pumpkin over and we're going to paint it with steel chalk paint from Waverly, and we're just going to cover the entire thing. So the stand of this pumpkin, I did color or paint, I guess, on the brown side. I painted that side brown, and this side I'm going to paint steel, and I did do it halfway. So on the side of it, it is brown on half of it and steel on the other side. And then I'm just taking white Waverly chalk paint and I'm going over the pumpkin just like I did on the other side, and I'm just giving it strokes so it has some dimension. And then I'm going to take the welcome sign from that Dollar Tree pack, and I'm going to do the same steps using the super glue. I'm just going to go randomly around the metal part, and then I'm going to glue it into the middle of this side of the pumpkin. So this side of the sign is ready for a bow, so I'm just taking some ribbon that I had left over from the Dollar Tree and some jute twine, and I just folded it over a few times, and I'm tying the jute in the middle of the ribbon. And then I'm going to cut that and just fluff out the bow. If you didn't want to make a bow for this side, you could totally go to the Dollar Tree and pick out another one of those pre-made bows and attach it to this side of the sign. Since this is a simple, easy DIY today, I did not make a fancy bow. I'm just going to fluff it out a little bit and glue it to my pumpkin. Here's the second side of our sign. If you wanted to, you could make the stem a little bit darker so you can see it up there, but I think this turned out so cute. On one side it says thankful and the other side says welcome, so welcome could be for the entire fall season. If you're someone like me, I like to decorate for fall, then Halloween, then Thanksgiving, so I'm thinking thankful might be a more Thanksgiving side of the sign, but I really love how it turned out, and it was super easy and simple, and anyone could make this craft. So for each of these projects today, we're going to be using one of those orange foam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. I went out and sprayed this one with my Rust-Oleum black flat spray paint. This is performance spray paint, so it's a little bit different than regular spray paint. Then I'm going to use some of these wood stems that I got at the Dollar Tree. I really like these for pumpkin stems. You can glue them on top of each other or just use one, and they just give it a really fun look. So then I'm going to take one bag of these googly eyes from the Dollar Tree. This particular bag only had 5 giant eyes in the whole bag. The next bag ends up having like a whole bunch of big ones, so it's kind of hit and miss like what you get in the bag. But we're going to take this whole bag and we're going to glue it around the top of this pumpkin. There are 125 eyes in this bag, and I do use all 125 eyes. So once I get those glued on the top of the pumpkin, I kind of start to glue them down after a little bit, and I'm going kind of in rows. So I'm going to take the next bag of eyes and I'm just going to start gluing them down the side of the pumpkin. This is a little bit time consuming, so put on your favorite TV show, a movie, podcast, something, and keep your mind busy while you glue. So this is the pile I have left. I used probably 3/4 of the bag. Then I'm going to take some ribbon. This also came from the Dollar Tree. I wasn't lucky enough to find any of the Halloween ribbon this year, so I'm having to use what was in my stash. And I don't have much of it left. I'm kind of sad. I did find it on the website, so I might just have to break down and buy like a whole case of it. but I'm just making a crisscross bow. I'm going to use some twine and just wrap it around the middle. If you want a better tutorial for these kind of bows, I will list that right here in the cards, and then it will be down in the description box as well. So I just tie it off really tight with some twine. I make a good knot, and then I'm going to clip that off. I do go ahead and dovetail the ends of this ribbon, and then the excess ribbon that I cut off from dovetailing it, I'm going to go ahead and use in the middle of the bow. That way I don't have to waste any of the ribbon and I still get a finished look in the middle. I then am going to glue this bow just up at the top of the pumpkin, and then this project is complete.
In the wildest dream I'd see you again. Never dreamed about nothing.
So I'm going to be making a fabric wrapped pumpkin here, and I have never made one of these before. So the first step to this is to use your scissors or a knife or something to cut out a circle up in the top. I did not realize that these pumpkins were hollow. So when I'm cutting out the top here, when I get around to the end, it actually just falls in there, and the whole inside of this pumpkin is empty. I didn't know that. Learned something new today. So then I just cut about a square of this material that I had in my stash, and I just start pushing it through the hole. I didn't even put any glue in this one because I had enough excess fabric that it's not going to come apart. This was so easy. I have shied away from these for a long time, just thinking that it was really difficult to wrap it with the fabric, but it actually wasn't doing this method. So if you have never made one of these before, or it was really hard or something like that, this is the method for you. So I just keep pulling it around and sticking it into the hole until I get all of the spare pieces of fabric into the hole. I do go ahead and put a slight bit of glue here at the end, just to kind of fold it over onto each other and glue it onto part of the other fabric, because that piece did not quite make it to my hole. So once I get all of the fabric poked in here and tight as can be, I'm going to take another one of those wood stems that came from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to glue it on top here with my fabric. And it sticks really well here, even though there's a big hole, because it's gluing to the fabric. So these are super fun because you could pick any fabric that you want. If you've watched for a while, you know I'm into blue for fall, so that's why I had blue plaid, but you could do any fabric you wanted here. So then I took some of these berry garland wrap. It's like a twine wrap from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to wrap it all around this pumpkin, and then I go ahead and wrap it a few times around the stem. Then I cut it, and I'm going to make some curly cues on both sides to make it look like a pumpkin vine. I do go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue up to the top, just to hold it in place, but this is wired, so it does kind of hold whatever shape you give it really well. And then all I'm going to do is, make sure it's secure in place, and then this project is complete.
I always thought I'd be waiting in vain, but suddenly there you were. Never thought it'd be easy to feel you in my arms, but now we're here and I'm all...
So when I was at Dollar Tree, I saw the most adorable gnome towel that they had out for Halloween, and I thought this would be a super cute pumpkin. So we're doing the steps much like we did the fabric pumpkin. We're just going to hollow out this top little circle, and then I do go ahead and add glue this time. I don't cut any of the towel at all. There is like a white border around this towel, and I thought about cutting that off, but the towel barely makes it to the sides, and so I didn't want to cut off any of the excess towel just to make sure that it got around to where it needed to be. You don't end up seeing any of that white border of the towel anyway after we get it all tucked into the pumpkin. So you could see I did use hot glue for this one. I just put it around the rim and then I start tucking. So this looks kind of like a hot mess, but I promise as long as you just keep pulling and tucking, that all of that excess actually fits into that circle just fine, and you can't tell that you tucked it in instead of doing any kind of cutting. So the really nice thing about this was they ended up being like, I don't want to say pockets, but they weren't really, but they folded onto each other, so they just folded in really nicely, and I just kept twisting and folding, twisting and folding until I got all of the towel in there. Then all I'm going to do is glue a stem on top, and then I'm going to use some raffia, and I'm going to tie the raffia around the stem into a knot, and then I'm just going to cut off any excess, and then this project is complete.
I never thought in the wildest dream I'd see you again. Never dreamed about nothing else.
So for this project, we're going to make a planter, and I did go ahead and use my same performance spray paint that I used in a previous one in this video, and I'm just taking some florals and stems that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just sticking them right into the middle of the pumpkin. I picked some of the darker florals that they had there to kind of go with the black that I had painted on there, so it's kind of a more like foliage type planter. And then after I get all of them in the desired area, I decide to go ahead and take one of these little scarecrows, and I just stick that right into the planter, and then this project is complete.
I always thought I'd be waiting in vain, but suddenly there you were. Never thought it'd be easy to feel you in my arms, but now we're here and I'm...
So for this project, we're going to be using some napkins and Mod Podge that I got at the Dollar Tree. So these napkins only have the printed part on about half of the napkin, so you're going to have to cut them apart, and I think I ended up using like 2 or 3 napkins. So I'm going to Mod Podge this on to the pumpkin, so I just give it a really good amount of Mod Podge. I told you guys in my last video I really struggle with Mod Podge, and this was no exception. I am really on the struggle bus. So anyway, I get it on there, and I really want to make sure that the grooves are there, so just go one section at a time. They are going to overlap a little bit, especially when you do the top and bottom of your napkins. So once I get all the napkins on there, I decided that it would be really fun to add some 3D elements to this pumpkin. So I go ahead and add my pumpkin stem to the top first. That way I kind of gauge where I'm going to add my other elements. And for some reason, I decide to go ahead and glue on the raffia bow that goes with this first before I glued on my 3D elements. Don't do that. Wait till you're done. I don't know what I was thinking, but it ends up kind of getting in the way when I tried to glue on my stuff. So I am out of pretty much any kind of Halloween ribbon. I didn't see any at my store, so I used raffia. Let me know if you would have used something different here. But I found these spiders at the Dollar Tree, and they have different colors too. They have purple, they have green. I went ahead and picked orange because it goes along with the napkin, and so for fun I decided to glue it on top of the orange spiders, some of the orange spiders. So I go ahead and use one full package of the spiders, and I glue them in different directions around the pumpkin, and then once I have that done, then this project is complete.
gonna be so much better whenever you're around. I wanna say something clever to get in your mind, 'cause right now we're not together and I lose my way then. Oh, I feel so much.
So for this pumpkin, we are going to be making a ribbon wrapped pumpkin. Can you guys believe it? I've never made one of these either. I think I must be behind on like the pumpkin trend. So I am going to use one full roll of ribbon from the Dollar Tree. This ribbon is kind of see-through. It's pretty thin. So I felt like it was okay not to paint this pumpkin because my ribbon has orange in it anyway, and so it goes with it. But if you don't want the orange to show through on your ribbon, definitely paint your pumpkin first, maybe white, and then it won't show through whatever ribbon you're using. So all I'm going to do is glue one end of the ribbon to like one bottom of the pumpkin, and then I'm going to glue it again at the top of the pumpkin. So a little bit of what I learned making this, I started just going one on top of each other around the pumpkin. As I was about halfway through, I realized that there was an easier way. You should glue your ribbon more like you would cut a pie. So if this was a pie, you would cut it in half and then half again. That's how I would do my ribbon next time. I would definitely go like where my ribbon is there, I would do the opposite side of that next, and then I would do the side. I end up with like a funky end at the top when I'm all done, and I cover it with a piece of ribbon to kind of hide that, but you could avoid that whole thing by just putting your ribbon around the pumpkin like you would cut a pie. So I decided to add a bow to this, and I told you guys I'm almost out of my fall Halloween ribbon, and none of my stores have any more left, sadly. So I'm either going to have to order some online or just, you know, maybe go without. So this was the ribbon that was like at the very end of my roll. I went ahead and just folded it, what was left, in half, and then made a fold over bow with that, and then I'm just put some twine here in the middle to give it the more of a bow shape. I do go ahead and dovetail the ends because we want to make sure our projects look high-end looking, and that is one of the easiest ways to do that. So once I get that bow all made and prepped, I'm just going to go ahead and glue it to the center of this stem here. Then I decided to add some of these leaves. If you missed my leaf DIY video where I made several projects with these leaves from the Dollar Tree, I'll list that here up in the cards and down in the description box. So I'm just placing 3 different leaves underneath my bow, and then this project is complete.
I wanna say something clever to get in your mind, 'cause right now we're not together and I lose my way then. Oh, I feel so much better whenever you're around, whenever you're around.
So for this project, we're going to cover it with some lace. I went ahead and sprayed it with some rose gold spray paint and some metallic gold spray paint. And then I did pick up my lace at a garage sale. I wasn't lucky enough to find any of the lace doilies that the Dollar Tree was selling, but you could use one of those here as well if you wanted to. I did put hot glue in the circle of this one just because my lace isn't as long as the fabric or the towel, and so I was worried that it wouldn't stay in there. But the really nice thing about this method to getting your fabric or whatever you're covering the pumpkin with is that when you're folding it over and you have kind of the big amounts and you tuck them in, it gives you those nice little pleats in the top, and that gives you more of a pumpkin look like real pumpkins have. So that was really what I liked about this technique that I saw. And again, it's super easy and really fast, and so it doesn't take you much time. So I go ahead and tuck in all of the lace, and I just make sure it's really secure in there, and then I have this nice little hole. So then I go ahead and use my wood piece to put in as my stem, and for this one I used a shorter stem and I pushed it in really well just to give it a different look. So not all pumpkin stems are the same. This one reminded me of kind of one of those squashed pumpkins, and I really liked how that turned out. So I am adding a Shabby Chic bow, just using that Shabby Chic ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I just tied it into one of those fold over bows again and glued it on there. And then I'm using some of these mini pine cones from a project I did a couple weeks ago. I will post that right here in the cards if you missed it. And then I'm adding an acorn and a little bit of that twine ribbon again, just to give it the kind of curly cues of a stem. And then once I get that glued on, then this project is complete.
I wanna be so much better whenever you're around. I wanna say something clever to get in your mind. 'Cause right now we're not together and I lose my way then. Oh, I feel so.
So for all the projects today, we're going to be using this paper pack that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. It is by Paper Studio, and so it did happen to be on sale this week. I know they go through a cycle where it's like every other week, so you can wait maybe a week or so, check it out, and then you can get it for half off as well. So I just picked out about 8 different sheets of paper, and these first set of cones that we're going to make, I'm going to cut into 6x6 squares. You get 4 squares out of each piece of paper. They look kind of small at first. I was like, but actually they work out just fine. So then I'm using some foam board from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just creating a circle. Mine ends up being more of an oval, really. It's not quite a full circle shape, but it doesn't really matter. No one's going to see the underneath side of it. If you're worried about it being a perfect circle, you could always trace something, but then you're going to draw a circle inside as well. So once I got those all cut out, and I took the scrapbook paper that I had cut out, and all I did was roll it into a cone shape. I'm using hot glue here, and I'm just gluing down the bottom of the cone, and then I'm going to glue the bottom edges together. So there's going to be some spaces up towards the top, but we want the bottom part where the coney type shape is to be flush together down there. So we're just going to follow that line of the circle, and we're going to go all around the foam piece. So I'm just showing you, like you can see here, that there is some big spaces in between. The thing that I kind of got my inspiration from online, it said that they just glued smaller pieces on top of those. I didn't really like that, so what I did was, once I got the full cone circle glued on, I just went back in with some hot glue and some more of this sized cone shapes, and I just filled them in through all the spaces that were showing. So then when I'm all done, I won't have any space here. I used about, I would say, 19 to 20 cone shapes, and my circle was about 14 inches in diameter. So you could go a smaller size here if you want. So here I'm just showing you how I rolled it up. The tighter you roll it, the more of a cone shape you get. And again, I just used hot glue, and I only glued the tail of the paper on to the rest of the paper. I didn't put any other kind of adhesive there. So these are 4x6 pieces of paper that I rolled into the cone shape as well, and then I'm just gluing those on top of the other cones. So we have more dimension here, and I went about every 2 cones, I glued another cone on top. Now I'm taking this pumpkin that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm using some folk art chalk paint, and I'll list down in the description box which paints I used, and I'll have a link to Amazon if you can get them there. But I'm using kind of non-traditional colors here just because my scrapbook paper had some more blues and greens in it, so I thought it would be fun to make my pumpkin a blue and green color as well. So I have the green color kind of on the underneath side, and then the blue as the cutout pops here in this piece of wood. So this, like I said, did come from the Dollar Tree. I think this is a really nice wood piece. They have really some great pieces out this fall at the Dollar Tree as far as like decorating goes. Some really fun fall and Halloween pieces. So make sure you go check that out. So this ribbon also came from the Dollar Tree. It's one of my favorite patterns that they bring out every year. I just do a crisscross and then I fold, and then I'm going to take some twine and I'm going to wrap it around the middle of the bow, and then I tie it in a knot. So it gives it a really tight look and you get a really fun bow shape, and it's not really difficult to make. You can hot glue the middle as well. The only thing about hot gluing it down in the middle is then you really need to put something over the top of it, because it's pretty noticeable when you use the hot glue as opposed to the twine, because once we tie it really tight here in the middle, it really doesn't need anything to sit on top of it unless you want there to be something on top of it. And for this bow, I didn't glue anything into the center of it. So I'm going to cut off the twine. I do go ahead and dovetail my ends, and then I'm going to use my hot glue to glue it onto the top of the pumpkin. So my scissors were getting kind of dull, and I didn't realize that when I dovetailed them. So it's a little bit of a rustic dovetail, if that's even a thing, but I just went ahead and went with it. So I just glue that bow to the top, and then we're going to take this pumpkin wood cutout and we're going to glue it to the top of our cone. So where our cone wreath had the hole in the middle, we are going to take this pumpkin and just using hot glue, we're going to sit it. You don't have to smash it because remember this is paper. So you're just going to sit it kind of gently onto the paper and press down. Now these cones are a really tight hold on this foam board, so you should have a really good hold. I do go ahead and put a piece of twine on the back, and then this project is complete.
I wanna do it all with you by my side. If you're in, meet me here tonight. Be brave and come along. I'll be alright. Promise we don't need no brake lights. We can travel the world, so just say yes.
So this is a wreath upcycle. I used to have this wreath hanging in my classroom when I taught elementary, but I don't teach elementary anymore, and so I don't have an apple theme. So I decided to just remove all the apples, but keep the raffia and ribbon at the top. So I'm using these Dollar Tree pumpkins. These are amazing. If you can find them in your store, I highly recommend picking them up. I wish I could have found more, but I wasn't lucky enough to. So I'm using my same folk art chalk paint, and I'm just going to cover both of the pumpkins with the chalk paint. So as you see, normally you would trace on the outside, but if I were to flip this pumpkin over, there's a lip there, and when I traced it, I wouldn't have the exact shape that I was looking for. So instead, I just decided to put it on top and trace it out. You're going to have a good lip on the paper when you glue it on, because like I said, there is like a space between there, but that's okay because we're going to use our sanding block and sand it off. So I'm just using a regular Elmer's glue stick. I find that it sticks on the scrapbook paper just fine to wood, and then you don't have all of the wrinkles from Mod Podge. So I just go ahead and make sure that I cover the entire piece with my glue stick, and because I'm a teacher and kind of a glue snob, I only use the Elmer's glue brand. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and glue the piece of paper on and make sure that it's totally dry before I start sanding. So make sure, you can see my paper was kind of moving there, so just make sure you're pulling your sanding block towards you and not away from you. So I'm going to do all this sanding around the side where there is again a lip, but there's like an edge there. You can see as I'm sanding that you can see part of the edge. You want to sand that really good, and once you get you can start to see like it's coming apart, you can just pick up the paper and peel it off. And that's what I love the most about using this sanding technique, especially if there's a lip. You can just peel off the paper and keep going. It gives you a really smooth edge. I'm going to do that for both pumpkins. Then I'm going to take some raffia. This also came from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to tie a little shoelace bow, and I'm going to glue some raffia to the top of both of these pumpkins. I think these turned out so adorable. Let me know down in the comments if you're into traditional colors or do you like kind of non-traditional fall colors. I'll put a video up above here from last year that I did some pumpkins that were non-traditional colors. I'm into blue, so that's what I always tend to pick, but you can check out the ceramic pumpkins I painted last year right here. So here we are, we're gluing our raffia on, and this is just simple, nothing fancy. You could add buttons here if you wanted, or any other kind of picks here onto it. I wanted the scrapbook paper to be the star of the show, so that's why I just used raffia. So the last step to this is just to glue it to the grapevine wreath, and then this project is complete. So we're going to start out with these wood pumpkins from Hobby Lobby, and I just really like these. I've used them a few times this season. I like the wood slats in between the pumpkin. I just think it gives it a fun look. And then we're going to take a old calendar page, and I'm going to trace the pumpkin onto the back of the calendar page and cut it out. So this pumpkin turned out to be kind of hard to trace because there's a lip on the bottom, and so every time I turned it over there was a gap between the calendar page and the pumpkin. So I decided to just kind of tape the calendar page to the pumpkin so that I could kind of trace around at least most of it and then fill in the blanks when I took the tape off. So once I have that cut out, I'm going to paint the pumpkin this truffle brown color from Waverly Chalk Paint, and I just go ahead and cover both sides of the pumpkin with the paint. So now I'm going to measure between each slat because I'm going to cut out my calendar page to fit into each slat of the pumpkin, and I want the slat part to show, so I want it to cut it just slightly shorter than each piece so that you see the brown paint in between the calendar pages. So we're ready to cut them out, and I'm just going to glue them onto the pumpkin with the Mod Podge, and then I go over the top of it with Mod Podge as well. And then when I turn it over, there is a little bit of a lip from the back part, so I just use my X-Acto knife and cut that off. And so now I have some jute rope, and I'm going to glue the jute rope to the bottom of the pumpkin. I don't want any of the calendar part to show, I just want the picture to show, so I'm covering up that red calendar part that is at the bottom of our pumpkin. Once we have the rope all glued on there and the calendar part covered up, we're going to take a pre-made bow from the Dollar Tree and glue it to the side to cover up the other part of the calendar page. And here you have it. I think it turned out super cute, and I just love the look of the calendar page anyway, but the pumpkins and the ribbon and the twine all go really well together, and I just really love how it turned out. So we're ready to do our other pumpkin, and you could have just turned this pumpkin over and done this on the other side if you wanted to. I have another video where I use this pumpkin 2 ways, and I'll post that here, but I decided to do 2 separate ones today. So I am using cashew paint, and it's really light, but you cover the whole pumpkin with it, and at the bottom I'm using that truffle paint again and painting the stand part. So So now I'm going to take my favorite stencil, which is the buffalo check stencil, and I've done a few projects with that. I will link those projects in the description box in case you're interested in checking them out, but we're going to turn it over and we're using the truffle paint to paint in the buffalo check, and we're just using a stencil brush from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to cover in the entire pumpkin with this stencil. So we're ready to add these leaves to the top of our pumpkin stem, and I apologize, I didn't realize the stem was not in the video. But we're just going to take some hot glue and glue these to the bottom of our stem, and then we're going to take a pre-made bow that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and we're going to add that to the stem as well. I've used these pre-made bows a couple other times in some other videos, and they really are a great deal. You get 2 of them for $1 at the Dollar Tree, and they do sell these same bows at Hobby Lobby for quite a bit more. So if you're not into bow making, or you're looking for something really easy and fast and fun, these are a great alternative to making your own bow. So here's the final look of our project, and I really love the subtle tones of the browns for the buffalo check. I think it's really beautiful, and the plaid bow, I think they kind of are a nice contrast together. My only critique would be at the bottom. There's a little bit of white space, and I probably could have turned the stencil over and gave it a little bit more of the buffalo check on the bottom. Ever seen these at the Dollar Tree and you're like, what do people make with these? Well, the next DIY is this project. If you're liking the video so far, make sure you hit the like button so other people have a chance to see it, and let's go find out what I made. So for this project, I'm going to be using 3 of these kind of the medium large sign, I don't know, the medium long sign from Easter, and I'm just removing the back parts of it, and then I also removed like the foam pieces that were on the other side as well. And I'm just going to use my favorite wood glue, which is the Type Bond 3. I use this all the time. I love it. It works amazing. So I glue all 3 of the pieces together, and I just go ahead and give it some time to kind of dry, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part. The only thing that I would suggest if you're going to remake this is to maybe sand the top of the sign. I didn't even notice, you're going to see when I use my spray paint, that there was like some rough spots at the top until I started using the spray paint. But I mean, I love how it turned out. So if you don't mind, then don't worry about it. But if you're someone who's like, ooh, then make sure you sand. So then I'm just taking my brown spray paint and I'm going to spray paint this entire piece. Where I had the wood glue, I probably could have waited a little bit longer for it to dry. But where there is some glue there, it picks up the spray paint a little differently. But that's okay, because we're going to cover it up and you're not even going to be able to notice. So I'm going to take that felt pumpkin and I'm going to use my gold spray paint, and I'm going to go over the top of this foam or felt piece with my gold spray paint. So I go around the pumpkin in between where the little slits are, and then I go ahead and do the rest of the wood piece as well with the gold piece, so that the only part of the brown that's showing is our pumpkin. So I'm ready to make a bow, and I'm going to use messy bows today. I just thought they were fitting for this project. So I took a few different types of ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to lay them down. So I thought it would be good to have a patterned ribbon, then a solid ribbon, and then another type of patterned ribbon. So I'm using 2 types of plaid ribbon here, and at first I was like, I don't know, if plaid on plaid, but these 2 were enough of a different color that I thought that they actually worked together. So I'm using my twine. I'm just going to tie it. It kind of all goes together because these are big pieces of ribbon, but that's okay because we're going to fluff it out and all will be well. So I'm just going to tie it in a knot, trim off my twine, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to kind of fluff. So these are a little bit different fluffing than they are when you do like an actual bow, because you're not fluffing out the like middle bow pieces. We're just going to kind of fluff out just the ribbon itself. And then once I get it to look like a desired look I'm going for, then I'm going to go ahead and dovetail the ends, because that's going to give us a really easy high-end look. So I do every piece of ribbon, and then I'm ready to attach it. So my original thought was to attach it up at the top of the sign, but then I decided no, that I actually really liked it being tied around where the stem of the pumpkin is. So that's where I decided to glue it. I'm going to go ahead and make my own little bundle here of Dollar Tree greenery goodies. I also did this in another video, and I'll post that up here, where I made some wreaths and I made my own bundles. I like making my own bundles because I can put as many as I want in there, and I can put what I want in there, and I can make the stem shorter, which is kind of the purpose of why I always make my own bundle. So I'm just going to add some hot glue here to the sign. I'm going to go ahead, lay my bundle down, then I'm going to make sure that's attached pretty well. Then I glue my ribbon on top of that, and then to kind of finish it off, I'm just taking some of the excess pieces of those pumpkins where the leaves are, and I'm going to glue that kind of down to the middle of the bow, and I'm going to add a couple more pumpkins there, and then this project is complete. So for this project, we're going to be using a breadboard wood cutout that they have at the Dollar Tree. I'm using my Cashew Waverly chalk paint, and I'm just going to cover the whole thing. Then I'm using my sanding block, and I'm just going to go around the edges and give it a good sand. I also do a little bit on the front and back as well, just to give it a little bit of distressing. The cashew color is basically the color of the wood, so you can't see a lot of it as it comes through, but the reason I did it was because then I was going to go over it with another color. So I'm using Sage chalk paint by Folk Art. I did pick this up at Hobby Lobby, and I have very little paint in my brush, so it's like kind of some elbow grease to get the paint on here, but I wanted it to be a very light color because I don't want it to take away from what we're going to put on top here. So I'm just doing a very, very light coat, and then I'm going to go over the top or the front of it as well, but there's like basically no paint in my paintbrush, and I'm just like lightly putting on whatever is left in there that I can get on. I do dip it back in the paint, but very, very little, so you just want like a hint of the paint. So I'm going to be using this window cling set that came from the Dollar Tree. They have so many cute window clings out this year. I just think they get better and better every year, and they're just adorable. So I'm using some Mod Podge and just a regular paintbrush, and I'm painting on the Mod Podge. I give it a really good coat, and then I'm going to stick it on to the front of the breadboard. Now you could put any window cling here that you want that fit here. I just thought that this was a really kind of a cute pattern, and it went really well with the shape. So once I get it glued on, I decided to take one of the like leaves that is also in this set, and it kind of matches the sage paint that we put around the edge, and all I'm going to do is glue that one to the top. And again, I just use my Mod Podge, a generous amount of glue, and I glue it on there. That is a really fun thing about window clings. Like, you can do, if you don't have a vinyl cutting machine, this is another really fun way to jazz up projects without having to spend a lot of money. So this ribbon was in my stash and it just matched the colors really well. So I made one of those crossover bows that I like to make so much, just a small one this time. And I am going to dovetail the ends. And then I decided that it still needed something. It was missing a little bit of something. And my go-to thing if something's missing something is buttons. So I pulled out my Dollar Tree buttons and I found an orange button that went really well with the colors, and I'm just going to glue that into the middle of the bow, and then this project is complete.
Do it all with you by my side. If you're in, meet me here tonight. Be brave and come along. I'll be your ride. Promise we don't need no brake lights. We can travel the world, so just say yes. Choose to do.
I hope you liked the first project. It was definitely my favorite from the video. Let me know down in the comments if you're going to recreate it. If you are liking the video, if you're liking just the DIYs, or you just really like my channel, I'd love it if you hit that like button. It helps my video be seen by other people. And let's get back into the video so you can see the rest of the projects I made today. So for this project, I'm using one of those wood crate, or I don't know, it's not a crate, but one of those like wood drawer boxes they have in the Crafter Square area. I'd already painted part of this one with some pumpkin Waverly chalk paint, so I'm just going to glue the inside of the box, inside, like the drawer part inside the box. And I'm going to have the heart facing down so you can't see it. Once I get it glued in there, I do cover the rest of the box with the pumpkin Waverly chalk paint, and then I take my cashew Waverly chalk paint and I go over all the box with my chippy brush. So the window cling set that I was using for this project had a lot of orange in it, and I felt like the orange was going to get lost in the orange paint. So I did put a generous amount of that cashew paint on top. Then I'm taking these wood beads. These did come from Amazon. I will link them down in the description box, but all I'm going to do is glue 4 of them to the bottom because we're making just a little stand, I guess, or a raised box. Once I get my wood beads glued on, and I don't paint these, I leave them the natural wood color because I feel like it complemented nicely the colors that are going on in the box, but you could totally paint them if you wanted to. So I'm just taking some various pieces from this window cling set. This one had kind of a mixture of leaves and just some kind of fun things like a pumpkin spice cup and a sweater, and I think the sweater says sweater weather. This one says pumpkin spice, and so I just go around putting these little window clings on each side of the box, so we're making a cube. And then I use some of the leaves. Now some of these like overlap the box, and that's okay. If your window cling doesn't fit onto the surface that you're putting on, you're just going to trim it just like you would a sticker or anything like that. And just make sure you have a good amount of glue on there to keep it on. I went ahead and trimmed these ahead of time, or like right after I glued them on, but you can wait until they dry as well. I have another project, I'll link it up here in the cards, where I did Christmas ornaments, and I waited until those dried to cut. So we're going to add this last window cling up here on the top, and I kind of play around. I wanted to put the words, but I didn't really like how it fit, so I decided to use this pumpkin, and once I get the pumpkin glued on, then this project is complete.
Whatever comes next. This or that. Getting drunk on whiskey on a Tuesday night. Drinking where I'm by an open fire. Make love or fight. This or that. This or that.
So for this project, we're going to be using one of the house cutouts from the Dollar Tree. This is another new wood piece, along with my folk art chalk paint in sage, and I'm using this sticker sheet from the Dollar Tree. So this is the same one we used for the cube. I decided to use this Hello Fall sticker here. I go ahead and I'm going to glue it to the bottom of the house. If all you wanted to use was this sticker, it would be really cute to glue it just in the middle. But I'm going to add another window cling here. So I glue this one at the bottom, and then I'm going to take the pumpkin off of this one and I'm going to glue it on top. Mine ends up being a slightly crooked. I wasn't paying attention, I guess, and I let the glue dry. You can readjust these if your glue is not quite all the way dried. So once I get my window clings glued on, then I decide to take some twine, and I really just make a bundle of twine. It's like 3 or 4 pieces. I tie it off with a knot in the middle, and then I'm going to glue it at the very base of the pumpkin stem. Once I get that glued on, I decided it needs a little bit more something. I do dry brush over the entire thing, window clings and all, with my Cashew Waverly chalk paint, and then this project is complete. I hope you loved the projects today, and if you did, check out this video right here. It was another video I did at Christmas using some window clings. Definitely my favorite Christmas projects I made with the window clings. As always, wherever you are in your journey is a perfect place to start, and I will see you in my next video.